Welcome to our next installment of the Milk and Sugar Effect Mavericks. And today we are chatting to an insurance entrepreneur who has worked at FSP behemoths. He set up businesses. In fact, there's that old adage, a rolling stone gathers no moss, and we're going to find out today exactly what he's been up to over the last couple of months. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast series. Help us grow this thing. At least share it or like it and help us get down the road with the Milk and Sugar Effect Mavericks podcast series. Now, Brandon, before we get anywhere, it's great to have you on Mavericks. You are a true Maverick. In fact, this whole interview series has gone south because I had a whole thing planned, and you've told me about a whole lot of new stuff that's been happening, which is an object lesson in how one should do research or how not to do research. But I want to clear one thing up before we even start. How much are you bench pressing at the moment?
Thanks, James. Thanks for the time. Always enjoy our chats. Well, as you get older, I think you bench press a little less, but still doing the gym every day though. That was one thing I was never going to give up. No matter how busy I was, that 1 hour a day is clear your head, and it's kind of become part of breathing. Is go to gym every day.
It's an important thing as an entrepreneur and somebody who is constantly on the move to stay healthy, both mentally and physically. And in fact, I mean, the reason I brought that up as the starting point for the interview, I think the only other time that I've seen you outside the context of work has been in the gym. It's impressive. I mean, I don't bench press what you do. Things have changed. I mean, I was saying a rolling stone gathers no moss. Yeah. You spent 8 years of your life building probably one of the fastest growing life insurance companies in South Africa. Well, that's how it's described, life insurance, so specifically focusing on wills. Yeah. But I want to know, where does your story actually start?
I think, James, I think I'm one of those guys where my whole life I've always been told you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think for me, that's like a red rag to a bull. If you tell me you can't do this, I'll go and prove you wrong. Going to government school, everyone said you couldn't go far in sport, and ended up making sort of provincial teams from that. People said you couldn't do my MBA. Ended up doing that. Everyone said you couldn't change the insurance industry. We kind of ended up doing that. So I think, listen, there's a lot of lessons, a lot of bruises along the way. But I think I'm one of those people, if you don't try it, I never want to be the one who sits on my porch and regrets things that I should have done or could have done. And I think that's kind of what I've always been kind of, as I say, a mantra, is if there's something that you believe in, and I've always been a person of, I look at something and how can I change it for the better? And that's actually always been my drive. My drive hasn't always been about, I've been lucky enough that we've done quite well from a commercial, financial point of view, but that wasn't the drive. The drive was, how can I change something for the better? And I'm one of those people where, well, if commercials are going to come through, they'll just kind of follow. If you're doing the right thing, money will always come. But I look to kind of solve problems, and I think that's kind of what I've been doing the whole time.
It's an interesting thing that you say, like, when somebody tells you can't do something, that it's a red rag to a bull. I'm sure, and you talk about the bruises that you have gotten along the way. What's the biggest lesson you've learnt for yourself in terms of your own development and improvement that changes the way you approach something when somebody says you can't? I mean, because I would imagine that the first response is, well, screw you, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always work. In your favor.
No, I mean, listen, there's been a lot of failures along the way. Everyone likes to talk about successes, but there's been a lot of failures along the way. I chat to a lot of people, and I do a lot of talks, entrepreneurial talks and everything, and goes like, what's the secret? I'm like, there's no real big secret. The big secret is hard work and perseverance. If you said to me, what is the main thing that I always talk about? I always talk about the 10,000 hours. And I know it sounds simple and it's kind of sometimes overused, but it's actually really true. People use the word 10 or use the phrase 10,000 because it takes you 10,000 hours to perfect something. And I always say to everyone, I'd rather get someone to work with me or work for me who has got the energy, the drive, and the work ethic, because I can teach you insurance or finance. Most things you can teach people, marketing. But I can't teach someone work ethic. So you get these guys that come out of varsity or these big, degrees and stuff, but they just don't have the same work ethic. So I always look for work ethic as the number one skill, and 10,000 hours. And I always say the person who gets to 10,000 hours first is going to win. And I chat to a lot of young people, and the whole new work-life balance thing that people want to talk about is I say, I'm not going to discourage you. Okay, if that's the way you want to live your life, come and work your 8 hours and then go play paddle or gym at 5 o'clock and whatever, that's fine. But the person who's putting in the long hours, working after hours, working, from 6 in the morning, they're going to just naturally get to 10,000 hours first, and therefore they're going to win. You speak to any sportsman, read Michael Phelps's book where he trained 365 days a year. It's the guy who gets the 10,000 hours first.
It leads me to the question. It's something you mentioned in what you were describing now is are entrepreneurs born, or can you actually learn to be an entrepreneur? Do you think it's, notwithstanding the 10,000 hours that you mentioned and the hard work that you put into it, but do you think that the successful entrepreneurs are those who are born with that natural gift, or is it something that you can learn and eventually succeed at?
I don't know if it's, can you become, or you can make an entrepreneur. So I do kind of lean towards you are born with it, but it's not really about entrepreneur. It's about understanding risk and being a risk taker and understanding what the consequences are if you don't actually reach what you want to in terms of a goal. And also, an entrepreneur, you got to have thick skin. You're going to have a lot of no's. You're going to have a lot of bad days. You're going to have a lot of bruises. You're going to have a lot of failures. And the difference between a normal person entrepreneur is a person who fails and carries on trying, as opposed to the person who kind of just gives up. An entrepreneur also will, to be successful, put certain things aside, okay, to make sure it's successful. People, as I said, go back to the work-life balance. I think for me, work-life balance was actually explaining to my family and loved ones why we are doing this, why I'm working these hours, instead of just doing it and just hope they're going to accept it. It's actually explaining why, because, for instance, me and my family work to a common goal for us. And I think that's a big thing. Also, the work-life balance. I was listening to, what's his name from, he owns the Dallas Mavericks, and he's on the, he's on the
We'll put his name down here so that you can see it. Yeah.
Mark Cuban.
Oh, there we go.
And Mark Cuban said work-life balance for him is you work bloody hard in your 20s and 30s so that you can have a bit more relaxed life in your 40s and 50s. That's sort of work-life balance. And I think if you look at any successful entrepreneur, they've actually just worked harder and did their 10,000 hours and kind of got there first. So for me, I think perseverance, work harder. I read an interesting thing from Will Smith. He gives some good points. You can't throw a punch. You can throw a slap.
Not at all.
But he was saying everything in his life is he goes out to win. Okay, and he gives an example as he was in the gym, he was on the treadmill. And he's like, guy being a guy, there's a guy next to him, and it was like, who's going to stay on the treadmill longer? And he was going, and the other guy was going, and he was going. And he said, although it was something just normal in his life, he was like, either he was going to last longer or he was going to die, okay, from a heart attack. Because even something small in his life, like going to gym and on the treadmill, he had to win. And I think that's the mindset that entrepreneurs actually have, is they want to not, let's not say win, they want to succeed. And obstacles are obstacles. You got to get over them. And the successful ones are the guys who fail, get up, and carry on.
How important is it to you? You've mentioned two things. The fact that you've mentioned Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, the Dallas Mavericks owner, Will Smith. For entrepreneurs, is it important in your experience, to read about other successful entrepreneurs? Does that help motivate you?
Yeah, so I'm a big person of motivation. Like I think, especially from the Capital Legacy days, I literally would either read or listen to something motivational. It could be just a phrase or it could be a story every single day of my life. It kind of put me in the right headspace. So for me, reading about other entrepreneurs going through what I at the time was feeling, I think that is, it's quite like gives you reassurance that you might be on the right track. They also went through failures. They also had hard times. And, unfortunately, many people don't succeed. But
it's also quite lonely being an entrepreneur, somebody who is a pioneer or who is disrupting the industry or is doing things that other people aren't doing. You've got to overcome doubt, disbelief, disinterest, all of those things. So I would imagine it does help an immense amount.
And also being unpopular because you're kind of always going against the norm, you know. And I think a big one's responsibility. When you're an entrepreneur and you've got staff working for you, when you're in a corporate, it's quite nice, because your responsibility is just either the division you're running or the people you're managing. But from an entrepreneur point of view, you go to bed worrying about that. Plus, you go to bed worrying about paying the rent, paying salaries, looking after people, that kind of thing. Building systems, building marketing, building a distribution. So I think you're always on. An entrepreneur can't actually take off. I get home at 6 and I'm not going to work. On a weekend, I'm not going to do this. On holiday, I'm not going to think about work or answer an email or take a call. I think that's what you kind of got to know when you're going into something like that. And that's why I think we said, are entrepreneurs born or are they made or can be made? I think you got to have an element being born with. I think you can nurture people who've got that. But I think could be wrong, but I believe you're born. It's like the thing, nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
I always, for me, nature will always win.
You and I actually have a very similar background in one narrow slice of life. So you had a little bit of experience in radio. I started my career in radio. Well, I was actually still at varsity when I started as a radio DJ at Good Hope FM. What did you learn from producing a radio show? Because that is something complete. And I mean, we're talking about entrepreneurship here.
Yeah.
What did you learn there that's helped you kind of in what you do today?
I think a couple of things is radio is live. Okay, so you've always got to be focused and concentrating because you can't say, oh, well, I messed it up and take 2 or we'll come back to that later. You always have to be on. It's live. It's to a big, big audience. And, people tune in to listen to that station. And I think also a big thing, like you, I was very young. I was at varsity when I was involved at 5FM. And you realize, yes, it sounds fancy and there's glitz and glamour and, it's quite cool to say you work there. But it's still a job. It's as important to focus on it as a job as if you were in a bank or an insurance business or whatever you're doing. It's still a job, and you need to concentrate just as much and take it as serious. I think maybe that's the right phrase.
Jumping, a couple of years forward then, one of the big things I think you'd agree that you've done is taken a startup, Capital Legacy, and build it into, or help build it with a bunch of other people. But I mean, you were instrumental in helping grow it into a behemoth now. It really is. It's like, it's now, it's got that momentum that I don't think anybody's going to stop for a while.
Yeah.
What were the things that you saw there that allowed you to disrupt the industry, and how did you identify them? What were the things that made you go, hang on a sec, that we can change this? We need to change this. We've got to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, credit goes to our business partner and founder, Alex, who I know has been on the show before. I mean, he was the one who spotted that there needs to be something different in the market. The way that people are winding up estates and doing wills. First of all, we weren't getting enough wills out there. And second of all, the way that for 50, 60, 70 years we were winding up estates wasn't the best effective way and not the best for the families and beneficiaries. So, I mean, he had the insight to say how we're going to do that. And then you've got to say, let's look at that. How are we going to get to that market? How are we going to educate people? It took us many years to educate people on why this is better compared to the traditional way. And you find that a lot with entrepreneurs go, oh, I've got a great new product or a great new idea. Everyone's going to buy in straight away because, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And I developed it as well.
It must be the right thing.
Exactly.
It must be the right thing to do. And you find out that, no, people actually do like the way things are done. It takes a lot to convince people to change. And I think our biggest thing, besides what we built from a product and a service point of view was to actually educate people on something that they didn't know. Okay, and that just kind of took for granted. So in those first few years, were actually about, bumbling along and trying to build a business, but I was actually trying to educate people that this is actually the way to go. But then once you get that momentum, then people are like, oh, this is great. And one of my proudest things is between us at Capital Legacy, we were a team, it's never about one person, we were a team, is that the industry has followed it now. Every single other insurance company has got a very similar offering, and I'm happy with that. It from a personal point of view, you change the industry and you've got the big sort of companies to follow, but it's actually helping people in South Africa. It is the right thing to do, and it's proven that it actually is the way to go, and we've just helped a lot of lives out there. And if Capital Legacy could do it and a lot of other companies can do it and we can help a lot of people, well, that's fantastic.
Well, one of the things that I do know about you, and I mean, maybe this is being bold, but you are an incredible motivator of people. So you're talking about, we've talked about being an entrepreneur and sort of working on your own, but then having employees that work for you. Where does that come from? This ability to motivate people to sell, because essentially at the end of the day, there's a product that you've got to get into the market, so you've got to have a team of sell. How do you build a team of excellence who are able to sell well?
Difficult. You say I like to motivate. I think maybe I just like to stand on stage. I've always got this thing, the problem's not getting me on stage, it's getting me off stage. But I think there's a few elements there. There's not one sort of button that you push. I think it's picking the right people that kind of have the same kind of the word philosophy, but same kind of habits and morals that you have and of the way you want to work. I think a big thing is showing everyone that you're one of them, being in the trenches with them. I think everyone kind of knows from the Capital Legacy days, I'd answer every email myself, answer every WhatsApp, take every phone call. I'd work the longest hours. I was in the office at 6:15 every single morning of my life that I was there. You could phone me at any time, and that they can rely on you, because you're in the trenches with them. Also, I think I was quite fair in the fact that I didn't know everything, so I wouldn't just bark out orders. I'd have my team and we'd discuss it. I think anyone who thinks that they know everything, the arrogance is going to fail. And Richard Branson had a great phrase. He said, he always surround himself with people who are cleverer than him because it makes him look good, okay? And I think we did I do that quite well, and I'm quite collaborative. If we do well, I never say I did well. It was always we did well. And small things like that actually motivates people, because I think sometimes people do extremely important and amazing things, but it kind of gets lost in the ether when either the bosses or directors, whatever, take the credit. I always like to have people also in the limelight,
Yeah. And you guys did that very well and do it very well. I think Capital Legacy is still doing it, but it is recognizing performance.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to recognize your team. How do you recognize your own performance? And do you think it's important to celebrate your own successes?
Well, I actually think it is. It's more, what do you constitute as success? Okay. Some people constitute success in monetary terms, power, size of business. I think it's more of, what do you value? I've got a few things from a satisfactory point of view that are sort of about the business and people, and then it's also, there's a nice little one or two ego things, If you said to me success, we changed an industry. We literally changed an industry that there are not many people that can actually say that in insurance. When I left, there was approximately, we had 2,000 staff. The stats in South Africa is one full-time employed person actually supports another 5 people. So if you have 2,000, you're actually supporting 10,000 people in South Africa, which is amazing. From a country point of view and from a feel-good point of view, amazing. It's a lot of responsibility, but that was one of the things that you say, how do you measure yourself in success? For me, that was success. For me, changing the industry, bringing a lot of young people who never had experience and see how they've grown to be sort of the giants of the fiduciary kind of world that people look to and respect for their opinions. So for me, those 3 things are amazing. from an ego point of view, though, I think one of my best things ever says, I got interviewed by Larry King. I mean, the guy you kind of grew up with, the most famous person to interview people, interviewed everyone famous in the 20th and 21st century, 30,000 interviews, and you sit there and the guy, he's saying your name. So that's the one ego thing. That's one ego thing.
I'm sorry you've got me, but I'll try and live up to that. No, I mean that's epic. I mean there are those moments that you can go, goodness me, this could be what success looks like. Larry King was a legend. I mean, he certainly is. Speaking of legends, though, your father is a legend in the insurance business. I mean, how much of an influence has he had on where you are today?
I think, listen, I never wanted to get into the insurance industry growing up. I actually come from a teaching background, and it's twofold. I was fortunate enough that I grew up knowing a lot of people, in the industry. I mean, from the Donald Gordon days all the way through to generally the CEOs of the businesses now. But it also came with a lot of responsibility, which was difficult. It's also, everyone's always like looking at you. It's like, if you do well, it's because your dad said. If you do badly, they'll be like,
you never lived up to
you never lived up, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think what it did do, I wouldn't say it gave any sort of legs up. My dad was very much not a person to push or influence in any shape or form. And I mean, he retired probably 2 years when I was in the industry. But it taught me that you got to work hard. I need to maybe overachieve what anyone else is doing, just to kind of be on the same level as them, just to kind of prove yourself. And I think maybe that's kind of where I got the work ethic element from. I always say, one of my things is I might not be the clearest or the brightest or whatever, but I'll always outwork you. And I think it came from that.
Yeah, it's an interesting. You mentioned a little earlier on about the fact that you were always the first person in the office. You worked harder. You responded to emails. You did it personally. I think if there's one thing that I've learned running my own business, it's like the speed at which you're able to respond to your clients whoever it is, makes a massive difference in terms of the way that they feel. Would you agree with a statement like that?
100%. I mean, I always said to people, I think a problem that I used to try and get across to the staff is just say, or just do what you said you're going to do. Okay, so like saying simple, I'll phone you before the close of business. Don't not phone them. Okay, and often people go, but I don't have an answer yet. Okay, but phone and say, I don't have an answer yet, but I'll check for you and I'll get back to you by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And even if you don't, make sure you phone at 8:59, because people just want to know that they're being listened to. People don't always want the answer. People understand that things take time, but they just want to know that someone's listening. And I think that's the biggest thing, communication.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. Do you find with millennials and Gen Z that idea of either face-to-face or picking up the phone and speaking to somebody is something that is just not part of their wheelhouse? And that must affect how a business runs, right?
100%. And I think it's a lost art of being able to pick up the phone and actually call someone. Everyone wants to, I'll send a mail or a WhatsApp or whatever it is. But still, you'll never be able to replace personal connection. Even with your AI and all that going mad these days, still people want a face. They still want to hear a voice, that kind of thing. And it is a problem, but I think what I've always said is, my pet peeve used to be, you get emails and it's email strings, okay? And a person says something and then someone responds negatively and then there's another negative one. I always like, after 3 replies, pick up the phone. Because you're never going to win on that kind of thing. And also you're causing frustration because there's a delay between when you're sending emails. So for me, it was always just pick up the phone. And it's fantastic. I'm a great believer in technology and where it's going. But sometimes there's the old school, just pick up the phone and speak to someone.
We started off this conversation by saying, using that old adage, a rolling stone gathers no moss, and we've spoken a bit about your past. I want to speak about what's happening now in your life, because just a 5-minute convo that we had at the start of this is that you are certainly not sitting still. It's like for me, you embody that entrepreneurial spirit. It's like you don't have one business going. You've got 4 new things that you are in the process of either developing or in process. I want to speak to the first one, which really fascinates me. You were talking about an education platform that you are developing for South Africa, which sounds like it's going to be another industry disruptor. Give us a very short summary of what you're doing there, because for me, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, it's something I'm really excited about. I've always wanted to be involved in education, but I didn't know, obviously coming from teaching days, how to involve education with where I come from the insurance background. And my wife's cousin, Dr. Vashna Jagannath, has come up with the most amazing platform, call it that, with regards to education. The problem in South Africa is access to education. I mean, I can give some scary stats, but I mean, we read them all the time. We are lagging behind, and it's a big thing in South Africa, and it's not getting better. Okay, and what we've actually developed now, we developed it from middle market going to, unfortunately, out where people have no access to education, is to make education on the same level for everyone. And what we've done is off WhatsApp, and the reason we're using WhatsApp as a platform is accessibility and the cost with regards to data. It's great that everyone's developing these apps. What people don't understand is apps, you need data, and data is expensive in South Africa. So we've used it off WhatsApp, and what it actually does is the CAPS curriculum that is used in South Africa from grade 1 to matric is we've mapped out every single grade in every single province, week by week, subject by subject. And when you go onto the platform, every single Monday, the child will receive on WhatsApp the curriculum for the week. So an example will be, if you've got a grade 8 pupil in the Eastern Cape, week 27, because the education syllabus is broken up by weeks, they'll receive what they need to do for English, of course, maths, science, whatever their subjects are. They'll receive that every single Monday. It's got notes that we've broken down, made more understandable, the actual textbooks that they can access. It's got quizzes that they can test themselves on, extra notes, even being able to contact live if they're not understanding something. And then I think a lost art in these days is reading. Literacy rates in South Africa are at an all-time low. So on top of that, your child receiving their curriculum basically on a Monday. On a Tuesday, they receive 2 free books to actually start reading, age appropriate. So we've broken up the books into different ages. And it's just to encourage reading, because we all know that knowledge comes from reading. And unfortunately, especially in South Africa, how many households really have bookshelves with books? And I think that's something that's powerful. And I think what we do on this platform is, it's not to replace education, but it's to complement what's happening at school, that you can do this as something extra.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that there are 2 things that strike me in this. The first one is you're solving a problem for kids who are in rural areas in South Africa who don't have access to necessarily good educators. And I mean, that's a reality. That's not a criticism. It's the reality is that they're not good educators there. But what I love about what I understand of the platform is it's encouraging self-motivation, which is kind of what we've been talking about here. Because you're saying you're not replacing teaching, it's complementing education. Yeah. But the motivation has to be there for the child to actually go through the curriculum and read it. And that sounds to me like a big win.
100%. And I think what we've done for that is as you say, unfortunately, in the rural areas, from an education level, from a textbook level, it's not actually being received. And if you go and visit some of these schools, and even schools in urban areas, sometimes the kids spend a whole day without lessons and things like that. Whereas here, they actually are basically having the lessons that they're supposed to have. They've got easy access to it. Why we used WhatsApp is it's a very cheap platform. I mean, it's really 30 Rand a month. And the reason we've done that's 0.58% of the minimum wage, monthly wage in South Africa. Wow. Okay. And for 30 Rand a month, that's basically you getting your education on the same level as anyone else going to to a school in South Africa.
And at the
it's
same
not
time,
watered
right?
down.
And at the same time, you were saying, if I understand you correctly, so in KZN, you might be on week 27, you're doing X in the curriculum, you're doing exactly the same thing if you're in the Eastern Cape, right? Which kind of standardizes everything and makes it easier for the provinces to work together.
Yeah, so I mean, the Eastern Cape won't do the same, let's use accounting. It won't do the same week 27. You might be doing general ledger, they might be doing cash flow statement. We know that Eastern Cape week 27, you do that, KZN, you're doing that. So those kids are going to, so we've mapped it out that what you're doing in class is what you're going to do in the afternoon. And what's great is also, I feel, is from a parent point of view. I mean, unfortunately, look at South Africa, and it's a reality, as you say. I think you've got to look at problems first before you try and solve them, and you've got to be real about them, not try and hide or put your head in the sand. There are a lot of people in South Africa getting up at 4 a.m, taking public transport to work, coming home at like 6, 7, and still got to cook food, wash. They don't really have time to spend time with the kids, but now the kids can actually go onto the platform and actually do the work. And what we have done is once a month, the parents actually get a WhatsApp of the progress of how much time the child has spent on the platform. For instance, that week they did 75% of their English work, they did 50% of their maths work, they did 100% of their science work. So the parents can be involved, and we're trying to help them because their lives are busy as well, and it's reality.
It allows them to be involved, even though they are, as you say, kind of not always present because of the kind of distances they have to travel to get to work. So what I love about that is the fact that they're still involved in their child's education without having to be constantly sort of plugged in, if you will.
100%. And I think what's quite nice about this whole thing is we're actually trying to help from a South African point of view. Just from the interest that's been taken up from many institutions and unions and things like that is incredible. Also from a donor and NGO point of view, guys really, really have come on board, really want to get involved. And I think it's just something that is going to grow and actually is going to assist with the education, because if we look at it now, it's not going to help itself.
No.
Okay. So this is another thing of saying, how can we, do something better for the country? How can we actually change education? That's my whole thing, is always finding a problem and how do you solve it? And I think this is one small step to get there.
And actually, I was having the conversation on one of the other episodes of this podcast series around the failure of education in this country that has kept us economically kind of depressed, to put it mildly. So I think this is a fantastic kind of solve. As you say, finding problems and providing solutions. Often we concentrate on the problem, it's all about the problem, but you've got to present a solution to be able to get out of it, right?
Well, I'll give you one of the stats. I mean, this kind of epitomizes why we're actually doing this. Is if you look up to grade 4 level across the country in South Africa, we sit at about a 12% literacy rate up to grade 4.
That is scary.
Zimbabwe and Kenya, as comparisons, sit over 80 and 85%. That shows how far behind we are to countries that are in Africa and actually right next to us. Say what you want with Zimbabwe, they're sitting at over 80% literacy rate up to grade 4, and we're sitting at 12%.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of probably the highlight of the most for us of why we actually wanted to do this.
When does this roll out? When can people have access to it?
So we basically have gone live already from a soft kind of launch. There's going to be a much bigger launch coming out during the month of July. The company is called Imfundo Hub. The website's up and people can go and check it there, but we'll be sort of coming out with a lot more sort of marketing material on how people, schools, institutions can actually kind of get involved in it.
Amazing. So that's one thing that you're involved in, and I mean it's incredible to know that there are people who are finding real solutions to big problems in this country. There's another solution that you're involved in. You've got a company called King Alexander. And this kind of, I guess, would speak to not a broad section of the population in terms of helping them save money, I guess. Would that be an oversimplification of what you're doing in terms of the insurance that
I think, yeah.
Let me pull it back there. Why don't you explain what King Alexander is? Because I think I might have just got it completely wrong.
So I mean, again, King Alexander wasn't my brainchild. It's a business partner of mine, David Lloyd. And we've partnered with King Price Life on their license. And it's more around the investment market. Again, we look at problems. And if you're an investor and you're chatting to your financial advisor and you putting money in and he says you must go into these X funds, if you actually look at what the costs are that you're paying sort of per month and per year, you're paying various fees to asset managers, to the financial advisor, to the platform that you're on in terms of the investment, to a DFM fee to actually manage it. All those fees come out of your investment. And it's the way it is kind of around the world. But those fees will stay the same whether you increase or you go up in the markets or whether you go down. Those fees don't change. So what King Alexander, what we've done there is we say you only pay when you're winning. Okay, so what I mean by that is we look at a target range of what you should be doing per month. If your investment doesn't hit that target range, then you as a client get all your fees back of what you've actually paid. The same fees still get paid to the asset manager and advisor, but you as a client won't pay. And only when you go above that target range will you actually pay a share in the growth to King Alexander.
So, I mean, you're incentivizing people here in a way that is completely different to how they're normally incentivized.
Well, I think it's just natural. I mean, you don't want to. I'll give an example. We went to a hotel in Cape Town, and we had atrocious service, and there was a problem with the room, and it had to be moved, and all that kind of stuff. And afterwards, they were just like, "We apologize," and they actually said, "You can have the 2 days that you were here for free." That's like, sorry, we can't fix it, but hopefully this will help, in terms of what you went through. I actually felt like, yeah, okay, it was still not a great 2 days, but, I feel like I got something back, okay? And I think the same as investing. I think people have this anticipation when you invest that you're going to obviously do well and your investment's going to grow, etc. But then you feel a bit, negative when it's not growing, but, you're still being charged fees. So I think what we've done here is we say we're in it with you and you only pay when you're winning. And I think that's people will kind of understand. And I think that's just a natural thing in life, that you don't mind paying for something when it's doing well, but don't rip me off if it's not doing well. And I think that's kind of what we've launched with King Alexander.
So you say it's not your brainchild, but you are involved in it. You're involved in the education platform as well. What sort of role are you playing in these businesses? And how are these businesses speaking to your skill set, your wheelhouse, if you will?
So I think from a point of view, I've teamed up with a lot of people in the different businesses, and I think I've been there from the beginning for most of the businesses, but I think from a corporate and a lot of insurance kind of point of view, I can sort of add a lot of value, strategy, knowing markets, knowing what markets to go into, distribution, very strong distribution, kind of bringing that kind of nuance to it. I think with us building Capital Legacy, we had to kind of know everything. You had to know how to do distribution, you know how to do marketing, you know how to do IT, you know how to do dev, you had to know how to do all of that because there was no one to do it for you. You had to learn. And I think the culmination of that allows me to be in the different spaces to actually kind of guide, put the strategy in place and things like that.
Is that a better place for you, for your personality, in terms of just having the freedom and not being constrained by, working within a corporate? You're not out of the corporate world, but it's like you're not, I want to say employed. You were never employed, but you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, has it just allowed you to be free to actually do the things that you're good at?
Well, I think it's going to, I like to be in an area that I kind of think I know well, which would be the insurance side, Everything that I kind of go into is going to be involved in insurance or finance. But also I don't like to be constrained, As I said, I like to see problems and try and solve it. So you don't want to say, well, this is all I'm focusing on, but you can, there's a problem there and you know that you can try and solve it in some shape or form.
Let's talk about some of the other stuff that you're doing, because that's just two of them, and there are a whole lot more. What else are you involved in?
No, so we've, I think a big problem in South Africa also, and I've got this pet peeve of seeing people ripped off, and especially the poor getting ripped off. And what we've found and developed is you've got the micro lending market, which is a massive industry. I know people will give it funny names like loan sharks and that kind of stuff, but it's reality in South Africa. It's actually how people actually survive. Okay, and so what we said is, in our little way, hopefully we can change it. So a lot of people, when they take out these loans, they have to pay for a policy, a credit life policy. Unfortunately, with a credit life policy, your premiums increase, but your debt decreases. One of the problems. Second of all, when you pass away, no one knows you have that unless you tell someone. So to tell your spouse or family member, and if no one knows about it, no one claims. Okay, now for me that's not fair. So what we've done started off in the micro lending space is, and we're working in the Eastern Cape and KZN area. A lot of the rural areas is, when the people come, they generally take out the loan. We've cut off at certain limits because we just know it's unaffordable. So we've limits that we work in. And when they do it, they've taken out the funeral cover, which they've taken out normally anyway, especially in that market and culture. Funeral cover is very important. So we've put in place a funeral cover when you take out the loan. But I think the special thing is, when you pass away, your spouse will obviously come for the funeral cover. Okay, so I know that the family's going to be getting something. But more importantly, the debt that's left over from the loan, so you still might have 3,000 Rand left over, that is actually taken away. So we actually write that off. And it's the way that we've actually constructed the loan and the funeral cover, that the family's not left with that debt. That debt is wiped off. And I think that, for me, is a small little way that we can kind of help an industry that is very big and is growing, actually, and kind of makes you feel better to sleep at night,
Sure. So it sounds a little bit like business with purpose.
Yeah.
It's no longer just business for the sake of doing business, and that seems to me to be a growing trend for many young entrepreneurs. It's like, I don't want to do business just because it's about the money.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you go into business to make money, but there has to be sort of real change that's happening, and that seems to be happening here, right? But there's another problem that I'm thinking of as you're talking about these things that exist in this country that needs to be solved. And I want to know from you what your solve would be, just off the top of your head, is financial literacy. It's like, if you think about it, myself included,
Yeah.
I know a bit of stuff, but it's like knowing a little bit of stuff is maybe more dangerous than knowing a lot of stuff. How do we solve the problem of people's financial illiteracy in this country? Not in one go, because I think it's got to be a process.
Yeah. I think financial literacy has started to become a thing. There are many companies out there, when they do sort of the company workshops and things like that, where they are either teaching about it or giving access, okay, to learn. But I feel that's actually a bit too late sometimes. And I think, going back to what we're doing on the Mfundo Hub, part of what we actually are sending the students is simple things like how to open a bank account, what does tax mean, all those kind of basics that, when you go into the real world, did you know how to open a bank account when you left school?
I had to do it with my dad.
Yeah, 100%. Do you understand tax? Okay, everyone's like, I'm earning this amount per month, and then they're like, I thought I was earning that. Yeah, but there's a thing called tax you got to pay.
Yeah.
Small things along those lines. I think where we missed or to solve the problem is, you actually got to start off in the youngsters. From a education point of view for adults, I think a lot of the products that I've got involved in now is trying to do that. So I always said, when we started Capital Legacy, our biggest problem was actually educating people of why. And I think when you're starting a product or you're starting to develop a service entrepreneur, start off with educating the people or outlining the problem, not this great solution that you have. Don't start off with a solution. Start off with what is the problem. Because once people start to realize that, then you say, but don't worry, we've got this to try and assist you. But financial literacy is a big thing. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I'd love to be able to answer that. But in our small way, we're starting off with, in our education platform, as I said, from a company point of view, I think if companies are taking these wellness programs out, I think part of the question of the HR or CEO is to say to the company, do you have a financial literacy course? Okay, it's great that you've got all these other things in the wellness, but do you have a literacy course?
Yeah.
And I think you put all these things together, it can only benefit.
Sure. And I think, I'm sure if you were to stop anybody in the street and ask them where their biggest stress lies, I mean, you could get a number of different answers, but I think right up there would be, where's my next paycheck coming from, or how am I managing my money, or it's like my money seems to disappear so quickly. I get the feeling, Brandon, that you are not the kind of person who is just going to stop there, because there are so many problems that need to be solved. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time moving? Or maybe not even, let's go there, because I think you move a lot quicker than that. But it's kind of like, where do you see the next big problem that you've got to solve?
So I wouldn't say I know where the next big problem is. I think problems kind of just happen as you kind of go through go through life. But I think a big thing that I said 5 years ago, and it's kind of where I'm wanting to go to, and kind of what we're trying to solve now, is especially in insurance. For years now, sort of your big insurance companies, that's where they develop the product. So from the big great towers, a product gets developed, it gets pushed down to the advisors and the brokers, and then they go out and sell the product. I mean, that's the way it's always worked. But often the people designing the products don't actually know what it's like to actually sit in front of a client or sit in front of an advisor. And what I said 5 years ago is I actually think distribution is going to decide on where the market is in the product, and the product houses will need to develop the product to suit that. Okay, everyone talks about South Africa being this diverse, and we've got many cultures and languages and all that, and we do. But if you look at our products, we kind of one size fits all,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to kind of champion is that you look for markets, and you can look for a market and say, well, there's a problem in that market, 200,000 people. But if we can solve that, you're solving people's lives. Sure. Okay. And I always said, if you do the right thing, the commercials always follow. So let's, solve that problem. Okay. If you see another market where there's 300,000 people, design and build it for there. Sure. Go towards sort of people's different cultures, because the culture is actually what drives South Africa, is people's cultures. And especially in insurance, it's kind of always been kind of siloed into, you fit into this box, so that's what you need. Fit into that box, that's what you need. Whereas, as I said, I think distribution, which is the guys out there, seeing where the problems are, is going to drive how we do product. And then product houses will just have to develop it.
So you're kind of segmenting your market in a way that has never been done, or you talk about segmenting your market in a way that has not been done. And I mean, that's the biggest frustration for somebody like me who might take out a product, is that I go, well, I can see the benefits, some of the benefits of this, but it doesn't speak to me in the entirety of my need. So what you're suggesting is, you're building something specifically for a market that needs a specific thing.
100%. I mean, basically, whether it's in insurance or banking, you've got three markets and so you've got your affluent, you've got middle market, and then you've got your entry-level market. Okay? Well, I like to think there's more diverse people across 60 million South Africans than just three segments.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is, I think going forward is we need to solve the problems of what those people are in. Okay? As opposed to say, we'll take this out and it might solve the problem. And that's why I'm hoping that, as I said, distribution will start to dictate product, and not the product houses saying that this is a product you need to take out.
Entrepreneur, problem solver, disruptor, a man on the move who is making change. Definitely a maverick. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I wore my black sheep cap today because I thought it would speak directly to the way in which you kind of operate, not as a black sheep, but as somebody who is different, who makes change, who is the change. Brandon, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. And there's so much that one can learn from people like you. So thank you for your time on Mavericks. And don't forget, if you've liked this content and you've liked what you've heard from Brandon and you have learned stuff, subscribe. We'd love you to help us grow this thing, and obviously like it and share it with your friends. Thanks so much for being part of I almost forgot what we were doing. Thanks for being part of the Milk and Sugar Effect. This has been Mavericks. I'm James Lennox. We'll catch you next time.